Hey homies, what's up? Ryan Wynn here with another inking demo. This time I'm inking over my own pencils. That's right, it's my own drawing there. You can tell because it's got a weird long neck. All my characters, I tend to do exaggerated things like that if I'm allowed to. Sometimes people don't let me be a little more exaggerated like that, but I thought it worked well for this piece. I like to do portraits of characters. So when I got asked by David Lucarelli, the writer of Alterna Comics Tinsel, to participate in the trade paperback gallery section, I jumped at the opportunity. I sketched up a little idea that I had of the main character, Abby, a female cop in the early 1900s on a Hollywood movie set, in front of a couple of film rolls that are going by in the background. Film stock. 35 millimeter, or maybe, no, it looks like I drew 16 millimeter. Anyways, I haven't thought about film in a long time, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We've got an inking demo to get on with. Let me know below if you know the millimeter that is. So, anyways, this was originally going to be for my Instagram, which is Ryan_inking_win. If you want to follow me over there, it's different than whatever I do on Twitter or anywhere else. Each platform I try to do something a little different. And I'm trying to explore the vertical video platform for IGTV, for Instagram TV. And so I did this whole thing, and then turns out it had filmed horizontally, and, I'm an idiot, so that's how that goes. But then I realized, I think on YouTube I've got a lot more Alterna fans than over on Instagram currently. I want to change that. I want to get everyone being Alterna fans everywhere. So I thought, hey, I'll throw this up on YouTube. It plays better widescreen on YouTube than it does on Instagram. And we can do, a nice longer video, and I'll just do a voiceover. So, I am using a Raphael 8404 number 2. That's the smallest brush I like to use. And I have a couple brand new ones. And, oh boy, using a brand new one is so nice. And I tend to abuse my brushes, so I'll go through quite a few in a year if I've got, a bunch of inking gigs. But when I'm inking my own work, I tend to be very delicate with the brushes, and I don't go through them as much. But when you're cranking through deadlines on superhero or horror comics, you tend to just fly through the brushes and, beat them up pretty good. But my own work, it tends to be pretty clean, so I like slick lines and stuff like that. Slick lines, bro. So I identify shapes first. I identify everything. That's what I run through my head. I just go, okay, identify the eyebrow, identify the eye, identify the nose, identify the head. I go around, do all the contour lines and outlines first, and that identifies everything for me. Then everything's separated. It's like when you do colors and you do flats or separations, as they used to call it. I do sometimes do some details as I'm going along, like here I'm doing the eyes and the lips. Sometimes I'll save that stuff for later, but the brush kind of had a good thin line going, so I was like, you know what, I can do these really quick before I dip down to get in and do her hat and her hair, which will be, will have heavier, more lushful lines. Lushful? I don't know. Lush lines, bro. Lush lines. So, here we go. You can kind of be bold with eyebrows sometimes. You don't want female eyebrows to look too hairy. So I do throw a couple lines in there, but for the most part it's going to be heavy, solid black shape. It's a lot of fun using a new brush. If you're scared to use a brush, I recommend getting like a Pentel pocket brush or any of the Pentel brushes. You can get them at like Michael's or, gosh, I almost said Aaron Brothers, but they're gone now. I used to work at an Aaron Brothers when I was, I think it was like 19 or so. it was actually a really good job. Learned to do framing there, and I learned to do marker paintings because we had a bunch of like beat up markers that weren't good enough to sell, and they just had them in a box in the background or in the back. And I would just you had to wear these little like apron shawls when you worked there, so I would carry around a bunch of the beat up markers and a little sketch pad in the pockets of that. And when customers and my managers weren't around, I would sit there and practice doodling and playing with the markers and stuff like that. Had like a little 2x3 watercolor pad that I bought there. And then after that, I went on to work in another, like a really cool art store, but I'm going to save those stories for another time. Anyways, inking hair with a brush, like I'm doing here, is one of my favorite things to do. When I was inking the darkness, over 10 years ago now, Michael Broussard was really good at hair, and Jackie Estacado, who's the main character, the darkness for Top Cow, he's got a lot of hair, like lush, long, black Italian hair, and so it was a lot of fun to ink. Did a lot of brush work, did a lot of nib work then too, but that's where I got to sort of get my chops with a brush, and it's really fun. Nothing beats using these real tools. I like working digitally. I like using all tools. Any tool I can use to be creative and to make something that wasn't there before, I'm fine with. I was against digital for a long time, and then I realized there's no reason to be against it just because I prefer something. But there is nothing like inking with a sable hair brush. I love inking with a nib and stuff, but that's work. You're carving into the paper. Yeah, the effect of and feeling of inking with the brush is more like ice skating or something. It's smoother. So going in, filling in the pupils, solid black, and with the highlight against the solid black like that, real simple, it draws the eye right to her eyes. No puns intended there. And if you look at artists like Art Adams, you'll see that even he does a little lower eyelid wrinkle on female characters, even if they're younger. Now, I probably should have noted at the beginning that whether you're working with pen or brush, that it's wise to have a pattern. So I started in the sort of lower left-hand corner of the page, and then worked my way over to the right, and then spun the page and kind of like zigzagged towards the top upside down, and then came around and did her hair, and her hair kind of led in a pattern that kind of spiraled around, so that my hand is kind of always on an uninked spot. So, there we go. That's part 1. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take it easy.